The flickering neon sign of the cantina cast a sickly green glow across Marcus Lee's face, highlighting the exhaustion etched around his eyes. He was Merc now, a phantom in the underworld, his DEA badge a forgotten relic of a life he barely remembered. 3 months he'd been inside the Serpent's Coil, a brutal syndicate woven around the enigmatic figure of El Serpient, whose whispers carried more weight than a firing squad. Marcus had carved his path in blood, or at least the illusion of it. He'd orchestrated a series of disappearances and accidents with DEA cooperation, each one cementing his reputation as a cold, efficient killer. The air in the cartel's safe house, thick with stale smoke and paranoia, felt like a physical weight. Every glance, every hushed conversation, a potential threat. The stakes were astronomical. One wrong move, one slip of the tongue, and not only his life but the entire operation would dissolve into a bloody mess. He'd become Merc so completely, the lines between his true self and the monster he pretended to be blurred with terrifying frequency. Sometimes, looking in the mirror, he saw only the killer's vacant stare, and the chilling thought surfaced. How much of Marcus Lee was left? Merc's reputation wasn't merely built on whispers, it was forged in a crucible of controlled chaos. His most recent triumph, the orchestrated disappearance of a rival gang leader named El Diablo, had solidified his standing. El Diablo, a boisterous man with a penchant for flashy cars, had been cornered in a parking garage. Merc, with chilling precision, had ensured the scene looked exactly like a cartel hit: the riddled car, the missing body, the unmistakable calling card left behind. El Serpient had been genuinely impressed, his reptilian eyes holding a new glint of respect. This validation granted Merc unprecedented access. He began attending higher-level meetings, observing the intricate dance of drug routes, money laundering, and political payoffs. He meticulously cataloged faces, names, and habits. The terse logistics chief, the jovial but deadly money man, the silent enforcer who never blinked. Each piece of information was a thread in the Serpent's Coil, a thread he was diligently collecting, even as the psychological weight of his deception pressed down. His mind was a battlefield, constantly analyzing, simulating, and suppressing the real Marcus Lee. The new accountant arrived a week later, a wisp of a woman with sharp eyes and an air of quiet efficiency. Lena Petrova, the logistics chief grunted, introducing her to Merc during a rare communal meal. Marcus's internal alarm bells screamed. He knew Lena. Agent Lena Petrova, his former partner, whose meticulousness often clashed with his impulsive tactics. Their last operation together had ended with a contentious debriefing and a forced separation. Now, here she was, in the heart of the Serpent's Coil, masquerading as a number cruncher named Elena. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second over the chipped ceramic plates, a flicker of recognition, quickly doused by the practiced blankness of their undercover personas. No nods, no subtle gestures. Just the cold, professional assessment of two operatives evaluating a new piece on the board. He watched her from across the room, noting the subtle tension in her shoulders, the way her gaze darted, analyzing even as she feigned disinterest. The familiarity was unnerving, a dangerous comfort in this den of vipers. He knew with a chilling certainty that their paths were now inextricably linked, for better or for worse. The cartel's internal machinations proved as lethal as any external threat. A mid-level capo, El Lobo, grew increasingly suspicious of Merc's rapid ascent. During a tense meeting discussing a new smuggling route, El Lobo subtly questioned Merc's origins, his past, his very presence. Marcus felt the familiar prickle of fear, a cold knot in his stomach. Later that night, a rival faction ambushed a Serpent's Coil convoy Marcus was part of, a brutal, chaotic firefight erupting in the dark. El Lobo, caught in the crossfire, went down with a gut shot, screaming for help. Marcus was mere feet away. The DEA protocol flashed through his mind: render aid if possible, preserve life. But Merc's instincts, honed by months of brutal pretense, screamed louder. A split-second decision. He saw a rival gang member closing in on El Lobo, ready to deliver the final blow. Marcus didn't hesitate. He stepped between them not to save El Lobo, but to deliver the killing shot himself. A swift, brutal execution that looked like an act of loyalty to the dying capo. The rival gang member fled, startled by Merck's sudden, decisive violence. Marcus stood over the twitching body, his hands slick with El Lobo's blood, the scent of gunpowder and viscera filling his nostrils. The remaining cartel members saw a ruthless protector. Marcus saw a piece of his soul chipped away, leaving him shaken to his core. The summons to El Serpient's private study came late, after the usual night's revelry had dwindled. The room was sparse, dominated by a single ornate desk. El Serpient sat behind it, his face unreadable. "Merck," he began, his voice a low hiss, "your loyalty has been proven. You are one of us." Marcus felt a flicker of grim satisfaction, but it vanished as El Serpient leaned forward, his eyes fixed on Marcus. "There is, however, one final test. The new accountant, Elena, she is a problem, sloppy. Perhaps even a viper in our garden. I want her gone, quietly, tonight." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow, a cold dread seizing his chest. Lena, his partner, the woman whose life he was sworn to protect. He forced his face into a mask of professional indifference, his mind racing, 1,000 possibilities and impossibilities flashing through his thoughts. Panic, cold and sharp, clawed at his throat. He had to respond, had to agree, had to sound like Merck. His jaw tightened. "As you wish, Jefe," he managed, the words tasting like ash. "Consider it done." The sheer, gut-wrenching terror of the command was almost unbearable. This wasn't a staged hit, a fake death. This was real. His partner's life, his own cover, everything hung in the balance. "Quietly, Jefe," Merck reiterated, his voice a low growl, "demands precision. To make someone disappear effectively, without leaving a ripple, I'll need more than a simple order. I need full access to her movements, her routines, perhaps even her personal effects for a staged scene. And a secure disposal site far from here to ensure no trace." He paused, letting the words hang, injecting just enough professional meticulousness to sound authentic. El Serpient considered this, a flicker of appreciation in his eyes. "Understood," he rasped. "You'll have what you need, but no delays, Merck." Later, Marcus began his subtle dance. He casually questioned cartel members about Elena's habits, her known associates, feigning interest in her vulnerabilities. He dropped hints about perceived inefficiencies in the cartel's current security, suggesting that other problems might need addressing first, subtly diverting attention. He even discovered a minor discrepancy in some ledgers, knowing it would send the cartel's internal security on a wild goose chase. Each small act was a thread in the complex web of misdirection, buying precious minutes, hours even. He needed to reach Lena to signal the impending doom without breaking character. The clock was ticking, a relentless drumbeat in his skull. The opportunity came, ironically, during one of Marcus's fabricated security checks. He found Lena hunched over ledgers in the cartel's dimly lit administrative annex, a place usually deserted after midnight. Her fingers flew across the calculator, a picture of diligent focus. He approached her desk, his boots heavy on the concrete. "Elena," he grunted, his voice rough, "El Serpient wants to close the books. Tonight, a final, irreversible entry." He leaned closer, his eyes locking onto hers, conveying a desperate urgency beneath the cold mask. "The audit," he added, the prearranged code word for imminent threat. "It's moved up. You're the target." Audit? Lena froze, her fingers hovering over the keys. For a microsecond, her meticulously crafted composure cracked. A flicker of pure, unadulterated terror flashed in her eyes, quickly replaced by a glacial calm that Marcus recognized as her battle-hardened resolve. She didn't speak, didn't nod, but her breath hitched almost imperceptibly. He saw the understanding dawn, the dawning horror of their shared predicament. The weight of her life and his now rested on the razor's edge of his next move. Their desperation hung unspoken between them, a silent scream in the suffocating quiet of the cartel's inner sanctum. The dance began. For the cartel, Marcus became the picture of meticulous planning. He trailed Lena, openly sketching her movements in a notebook, occasionally conferring with guards about optimal surveillance points. He discussed hypothetical disposal methods with other enforcers, hinting at various gruesome scenarios to reinforce his cover. He even requested specialized equipment, a large tarp industrial-strength cleaner, to create the illusion of a clean, thorough job. Every visible action screamed ruthless executioner. But beneath this facade, a desperate collaboration unfolded. During brief, stolen moments, a bathroom break, a late-night security patrol near her quarters, Marcus and Lena whispered, their voices barely audible. They dissected Lena's routine, identifying blind spots, potential exits. They brainstormed scenarios, a staged kidnapping, a sudden inexplicable illness, a defector making a run for it. Lena, with her sharp accountant's mind, detailed every cartel camera, every guard shift. Marcus, drawing on his experience as a field operative, focused on misdirection and creating a convincing scene. The pressure was immense, each whispered word a gamble, each fleeting glance a vital piece of communication. They were building a lie so intricate, so believable, that it would hopefully save both their lives. The constant charade, the whisper of death in every shadow, began to unravel Marcus. Sleep offered no escape. It was a battlefield of his own making. He'd wake in a cold sweat, the scent of El Lobo's blood thick in his nostrils, seeing Lena's face in the dying man's eyes. One night, a nightmare gripped him. He stood over Lena, a gun heavy in his hand, El Serpient's reptilian smile gleaming in the periphery. He pulled the trigger, but the sound wasn't a gunshot. It was Lena's scream, followed by his own. He jolted awake, heart hammering against his ribs, the walls of his meager room feeling like a coffin. During the day, the pressure manifested as a tremor in his hand, a twitch in his eye that he fought to suppress. He found himself staring blankly at walls, the meticulous planning for Lena's fake death feeling less like a strategy and more like an elaborate descent into madness. The lines blurred. Was he Marcus Lee, the DEA agent fighting for justice, or Merck, the cold-blooded killer meticulously orchestrating a hit? The fear wasn't just of being caught. It was of losing himself entirely to the monster he'd become. The cartel's silent enforcer, a man named Rojas, began to watch Marcus. Rojas had been El Lobo's shadow, and though Marcus had avenged his death, a cold, calculating glint in Rojas's eyes suggested suspicion, not gratitude. Marcus noticed him lingering, a little too long, near the admin annex after Lena had left for the night. He caught Rojas observing him during his staged surveillance of Lena's movements, a faint, almost imperceptible smirk playing on the enforcer's lips. It was the kind of smirk that indicated he saw something Marcus didn't want him to see. Rojas started asking casual, probing questions about Merck's past, his contacts, the details of previous jobs that only a true insider would know. He'd throw out obscure cartel slang, testing Marcus's reaction. Once he pointedly asked, "You seem distracted lately, Merck. Is the accountant proving a tougher nut than expected?" The question, delivered with feigned concern, was a thinly veiled accusation. Marcus deflected, his heart hammering, but the encounter left him cold. Rojas wasn't just observing, he was digging. He was a new, unpredictable variable, a wolf sniffing at a carefully constructed sheep's clothing, and he was getting dangerously close to tearing it all apart. The hit was a macabre performance. Marcus chose a remote section of the cartel's sprawling compound near a rarely used access road. He created a scene of struggle, overturned barrels, scattered papers, and a single discarded shoe. Crucially, a small, inconspicuous blood pack, carefully placed, burst convincingly. Lena, disguised and having slipped out through a maintenance tunnel Marcus had discovered, was already miles away, her escape facilitated by the chaos. A few hours later, Marcus returned, grim-faced, reporting the elimination to El Serpient. He described a struggle, a quick, clean job, and the disposal of the body in a remote location known only to a few. El Serpient grunted, a nod of satisfaction. The cartel bought it. The word spread quickly, the accountant was gone, but Rojas wasn't satisfied. Marcus caught him later, meticulously examining the crime scene, his eyes scanning for details others missed. Rojas knelt, picking up a small, almost invisible fragment of glass from the ground, sniffing it, then pocketing it. He didn't say a word, just gave Marcus a long, unsettling look that spoke volumes. The investigation had begun. Marcus knew it. He had bought Lena time, but at what cost? His own cover was now under direct, personal scrutiny. With Lena gone, Marcus's utility to El Serpiente shifted. The immediate threat of the hit was over, but a new, insidious danger emerged. The cartel no longer needed a contract killer on standby. He was a loose end, a potential liability. Rojas's silent scrutiny became a constant, suffocating presence. Marcus knew his time was running out. He redoubled his efforts to gather actionable intelligence, focusing on El Serpiente's vulnerabilities. He infiltrated the Jefe's private office during a power outage, meticulously photographing ledgers and encrypted communication devices. He listened intently to hushed conversations, piecing together fragments about a hidden offshore account and a corrupt politician El Serpiente was blackmailing. He also sought a direct line to his DEA handler, a desperate attempt to signal for an extraction. The prearranged dead drops were compromised, the communication channels jammed. He felt utterly alone, isolated in the heart of the serpent's coil, a ghost among predators. Every piece of intel he gleaned was a potential lifeline, a weapon against the inevitable. He needed a leverage point, something so damning, so explosive, that it would force El Serpiente's hand or shatter the cartel from within, creating an opening for escape. The game had changed from survival to active sabotage. Rojas had been a ghost, always present, never speaking. But his eyes, cold and relentless, had been dissecting Marcus's every move since the disappearance of Elena. One evening, as Marcus meticulously copied a hidden ledger, a shadow fell over his shoulder. Rojas, in his hand he held a small, delicate piece of clear plastic, a fragment of a lens. Marcus's blood ran cold. He recognized it instantly. A piece of Lena's reading glasses, which she'd deliberately broken and scattered at the staged scene, a tiny detail Marcus thought was too small for cartel eyes. "This Merc," Rojas's voice was a low growl, devoid of his usual feigned pleasantness, was found near where the accountant supposedly fought for her life. A very specific type of plastic. Not from any window, not from any bottle we have here. He paused, his gaze boring into Marcus. It matches the pair Elena wore. Funny, isn't it, for someone so disposed of, she left behind such a personal memento. Almost as if she wasn't in a struggle for her life at all, almost as if she was asterisk helped asterisk. The implication hung heavy, a death sentence. Rojas didn't wait for a response. He turned on his heel, the fragment still clutched in his hand, heading directly for El Serpiente's private quarters. Betrayal had a name, and it was Rojas. The heavy oak door to El Serpiente's study swung open, revealing Marcus. Two hulking enforcers flanked him, their hands on their weapons. Inside, El Serpiente sat, impassive, with Rojas standing beside him, a small, clear fragment held delicately between his thumb and forefinger. The air crackled with lethal silence. "Merc," El Serpiente's voice was low, dangerous. "Rojas here has found something disturbing, something that suggests you made a fool of me. You allowed the accountant to escape." All this Marcus met El Serpiente's gaze, forcing his features into a mask of cold fury. "Escape? Jefe, with all due respect, Rojas is either a fool or a liar. That accountant was a viper, yes, but she was also a DEA plant." He paused, letting the bombshell land. She was trying to gather intelligence, not escape. I allowed her to flee, yes, but only to follow her, to discover who she reported to, who her handler was. I needed to see the full scope of their operation, not just eliminate one low-level operative. This piece of glass, it's from her comms device, smashed during the struggle, a signal I missed. Rojas, in his eagerness to impress, has disrupted a crucial counterintelligence operation. He gestured dismissively at Rojas. Or perhaps, Jefe, Rojas has his own agenda. Perhaps he's working with this DEA cell, trying to discredit me, knowing I'm close to exposing their asterisk mole within your ranks. The accusation hung in the air, a venomous dart aimed squarely at Rojas, leveraging the cartel's inherent paranoia. El Serpient's reptilian gaze flickered between Merck and Rojas, a predator weighing its prey. Marcus knew this was it, his last card. He reached into his inner jacket pocket, not for a weapon, but for the encrypted phone he'd managed to reactivate during his reconnaissance of El Serpient's office. With a flick of his thumb, he sent a precomposed message. A burst transmission containing the coordinates of the compound, the names of key cartel figures, and the damning evidence of El Serpient's offshore accounts and his hold over the corrupt politician. It was a digital flare, a desperate plea to the DEA for immediate extraction, a promise of a firestorm. "Hef," Marcus continued, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him, "Rojas is too quick to judgment. But I know what he doesn't. He doesn't know about the Silver Serpent account in Panama or the tapes of Governor Ramirez." He watched El Serpient's face for the flicker of surprise, the subtle widening of his eyes. It was there. "And he certainly doesn't know that El Gato, your logistics chief, has been skimming from the northern routes, telling his own men that you're losing your touch." This was the poison. The seeds of discord, carefully planted from his gathered intel, designed to pit El Serpient's paranoia against itself. The room began to fill with tension, a palpable shift as El Serpient's attention divided, his trust eroded from within. Marcus had thrown a grenade into the heart of the serpent's coil, praying it would create enough chaos for a desperate escape. The seeds of paranoia Marcus had sown blossomed into a wildfire. El Serpient's study erupted. Rojas, incensed by the accusation, lunged, drawing a blade. Before El Serpient could react, a series of distant explosions rocked the compound. The DEA raid, triggered by Marcus's desperate signal, was underway. Gunfire erupted outside, sirens wailing. The enforcers in the room panicked, turning their weapons not on Marcus, but on each other, caught between El Serpient's furious orders and the sudden external assault. Marcus seized the chaos. He disarmed Rojas with a brutal, practiced move, sending the enforcer sprawling. Just as a cartel guard aimed at Marcus, a figure burst through a side door, a silenced pistol spitting fire. It was Lena, her face grim, eyes locked onto Marcus. She used her staged escape to circle back, anticipating the precise moment of maximum confusion. "Go," she yelled over the din, pointing towards a ventilation shaft. "I've got this flank." He didn't question it. Together, they became a whirlwind of coordinated violence, moving through the exploding compound, Lena covering his rear, Marcus carving a path through the disoriented cartel members. Every bullet was a near miss, every corner a potential ambush. They were fighting not just for their lives, but for the entire operation. The DEA tactical teams swarmed the compound, their shouts cutting through the cacophony of gunfire. Marcus and Lena fought their way to the main courtyard, battered but alive, Lena with a nasty gash on her arm, Marcus favoring a rib. They saw El Serpient, caught in the crossfire between his own confused men and the DEA agents, finally brought down in a hail of bullets. Rojas, surprisingly, was found slumped against a wall, not from a bullet, but from a broken neck, Marcus's desperate disarming move more lethal than intended. A DEA agent, familiar to Marcus, rushed forward, recognition dawning in his eyes. "Lee Petrova, you made it." The sheer, overwhelming relief washed over Marcus, nearly buckling his knees. The roar of helicopters overhead, the flashing lights, the shouts of command, it was the sweetest symphony he'd ever heard. They were pulled into the relative safety of an armored vehicle, the scent of gunpowder replaced by sterile medical supplies. The mission was a resounding success. The Serpent's coil was shattered, its leader dead, its inner workings exposed. But as Marcus looked at Lena, her face pale, her eyes haunted, he knew the physical wounds would heal. But the unseen ones, carved by months of deceit and moral compromise, would linger. The silence in the armored vehicle was heavy, filled with unspoken trauma. Weeks later, the sterile hum of the DEA safe house was a stark contrast to the cartel's chaotic compound. Marcus sat staring at a mug of lukewarm coffee, the debriefing officer's voice a distant drone. El Serpient was dead, his network dismantled. Rojas, a forgotten casualty. The operation was a triumph, a textbook success. Yet the taste in Marcus's mouth was bitter. He looked at his reflection in the dark window. Was it Marcus Lee staring back, or Merrick, the phantom killer whose ruthless decisions saved them? The lines blurred, an indelible stain on his psyche. He remembered El Lobo's dying gaze, the calculated brutality of his own actions, the chilling ease with which he'd orchestrated Lena's fake death. He had crossed lines not just for the mission, but to survive, becoming the monster to defeat monsters. Lena sat across the room, her arms still bandaged, her eyes holding the same distant, haunted look as his own. They were safe, yes. They were alive, but the victory felt ambiguous, a hollow echo in the quiet aftermath. The DEA had Marcus Lee back, but a piece of him, the innocent, untainted part, had been left behind in the serpent's coil, forever lost in the shadows he'd embraced.